To speak to us more about the impact of a hard lockdown on the tourism sector due to COVID-19 pandemic, when I joined on the line by Unathi Henama, a tourism lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology. Sir, always a pleasure to have you here with us on SABC News. Thank you for your time.
Well, it's a pleasure.
At the start, I'll tell you, Unathi, that I do see, though, before we get into all the stats, I do see many people traveling now and, with lockdown restrictions not being as strict as they were. What do you make of this, that it's picked up so much? And I'm sure this is in good news for the tourism industry. Before we talk about the negatives, let's maybe just focus briefly on the positives.
The lockdown had people at home and people just wanted to go out. So hiking activity, adventure activities have increased. People wanted to go home, so visiting friends and relatives was also increased. Because people can use Zoom for meetings, they can actually spend more time at home. Basically, maybe can be on a Wednesday or a Thursday, because now they can work off-site and they've been given all of these accesses for data to work from home. So I believe that there's also a good story to tell. So I believe municipalities must obviously ensure that they've got fiber, just to ensure that connections are much more better, so that those people that travel back home to the rural hinterlands, to the locations, they can actually spend more time at a place called home and spend more social time with family and friends, which is always good for health.
Yeah. With the effects of hard lockdown, there's no doubt that, this will be felt for a very long time in the tourism sector. But I assume that you are sort of confident that the tourism industry will pick up relatively quickly and do well again. But on the back of that, and I wonder if this is something you're really actually actively concerned about, if I can put it that way, is, of course, us hearing of the second wave of COVID and people very worried about possibly going back to the harder restrictions. This is, I can't ask you if this is a possibility, that's not your expertise, but is this really a big concern in the tourism industry, or are they kind of relaxed about it?
I think obviously we would not want the second wave to occur. And I believe we are obviously asking our very disciplined South Africans to continue following all those rules of social distancing, wearing of masks. But I must say, Flo, besides a few people that always pull the parties, South Africans have generally been responsible. And I believe that is the message should be taken out of the country, that South Africans have been responsible, so they should continue in this responsible manner. That has actually led to a decline in COVID infections, even in lockdown level 3. Whereas, if you look at lockdown number 5 and number 4, that was when there was a peak in our infections. So South Africans have been very responsible people. So I believe they will continue behaving in a responsible manner. And the second wave, once again, South Africa will defy all the odds and not have a second wave, just like we never had a monumental number of people that lost their lives.
When you look at those stats, the tourism and migration stats that were released by Stats SA, is there anything there that you looked at perhaps today that might have surprised you a little bit? We're just showing a little bit of it here on our images at the same time as I'm speaking to you. Was there anything in particular that might have been surprising to you?
No, there's nothing surprising with the results. The hard lockdown, obviously led to a great decline in the number of people that arrived within our country. But I believe if you look at the comparisons, we had on average nearly 230,000 people that arrived in our country, compared to 3 million people that arrived in our country. And out of that 3 million, generally 2.5 million of them were international arrivals. So I think it once again reflects that as a destination, we are very, very disproportionately dependent on regional tourists and international tourists to sustain our tourism value chain. Yeah. So now, if we want to bounce back, then it means that we have to remove a lot of these countries that we put on the red list, such as Germany, UK, the USA, because they bring the bulk of the tourists that come to our country. And remember, Flo, for our industry to operate, there must be a warm body that comes. And if we put those countries on the red list, the airlines will not put South Africa on the itinerary. Yeah. So if the airlines who provide this important connectivity are not putting South Africa on the itinerary, then we're in big trouble. Then it means the many homes that depend on tourism, the many lives that depend on tourism, the many mouths that depend on tourism will not be able to put food on the table, because the people that want to visit the country will be unable. And Flo, already the East Committee is faced in South Africa, so a tourist that comes does not pose an additional risk. And that is the conversation that we are having with government.
Yeah.
And government, when they draft these things, they don't engage the private sector.
I just want to play devil's advocate for a little bit. Of course, I want to see the tourism industry booming. No doubt any normal South African would want to see that because it's good for GDP. I mean, even the fact that, I'm really surprised to even read the fact that 1 in 23 people who are employed work in the tourism industry. But when we're talking about the red list, which of course, as you rightly mentioned, was revised in terms of countries that aren't to visit South Africa, people from countries that aren't to visit South Africa, including UK, USA and Germany, as you've mentioned. Surely, though, there was some thinking into that, in that government wouldn't have just released this kind of a list without any sort of prior thinking to it. And of course, as we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, the fears around that sort of second wave, I mean, is that really not the sort of concern in terms of balancing out, of course, what's good for the tourism industry, but on the other hand, also, remaining concerned about what might bring us into another difficult situation?
The flow is called talking left, walking right.
Yeah.
The government is saying citizens of those countries who want to invest in our country, in our sectors such as agriculture and so forth, and investors, they are allowed to come, but not a visitor who's not allowed to come. So why would they want visitors from those countries that they regard as high risk, but not be willing to accept your typical tourist who comes to South Africa and spend money? And remember, German tourists, American tourists, UK tourists, they are very used to South Africa. They've also bought second homes, all around the country they bought second homes. And remember, second homes have got a greater implication. If I'm a second home owner, I'll have a domestic worker that comes and work. I'll have a person who comes and does gardening services. Yeah. So there are also those local economic linkages that second homes have, of which these major countries are the ones that always come to South Africa and have bought property within the country. So once again, Flo, we have to continue having the conversations, participating in public discourse, so that we reflect a different outlook on everything.
All right. Always a pleasure having you with us, sir. Thank you for your time, Unathi Henama. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.